How's it going, everyone? Eric here with Pure Pressure. Super excited to have Collin Palmer of Vessel Life Sciences. Got to get my words right here. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Just waiting for Collin. He should be in just a moment. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Should be a great episode. Collin has been around making hash in the cannabis industry, and just generally way more connected than most people would realize. So, hey, what's up, Collin? Let me know if you have any issues joining up. There we go. All right. Get my camera set up here. Okay, cool. What's up,
hey,
man?
guys. Hey, brother, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us, Collin. I'm going to give my little disclaimer / intro, outro a couple times throughout the broadcast, so bear with me. We got Collin Palmer of Vessel Life Science, as well as Happy Valley out in Massachusetts with us. Going to be joining us today for our Solventless Hash Q&A. Super excited to get into this one. And then just like always, we'll have the episode up on After the Fact and the full YouTube recap in about a week or two. Make sure that you check that. Oh, looks like having a little connection issue. Should get him back on a second here. Appreciate everyone giving us just a moment, being patient. This should be a good episode. So hopefully Collin will be back on in a moment here. There we go. All right. Sweet. All right, you're back.
All right.
Cool.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's all good. We rarely have technical issues, and that's a blessing. So why don't you start us off with giving everyone who's tuned in a little intro about you and the companies that you work for. Why don't we start there for anyone that does not know you?
Yeah, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me, first of all. Eric, a real pleasure. Your tools have helped me immensely, and it's really exciting times for everyone in solventless. But yeah, so my background is in cultivation. I've been cultivating cannabinoid-based plants for, cultivating since 1998. I started washing in about 99, where I kind of found a niche with the forums and posting on the forums, such as Laughing Moon, and Overgrowth shortly came after that, and then all of what happened with Icey and so on and so forth, where there was a community of individuals that were sharing information. It wasn't necessarily widely available at the time. People like Marcus Richardson, who's been a mentor, friend, and a great advocate for what I've been doing for the better part of 20 years. And, we've really honed in on our skill sets over the years and started taking note on cultivation techniques that were really aiding towards specific trichome development. And then ultimately pairing that with good wash tech. So, it's been a long journey. It's been an exciting one. I think solventless has come a long way since 1999, and I think we're only going even further with it now, So, I really truly hone in on certain varieties. I truly believe that your assets really rely in the cultivation techniques and the type of varieties that you're actually growing and how they translate through a process.
Awesome. Yeah, and something that has been obviously a consistent theme throughout all of the IG lives we've had with all kinds of people is just really the grow and the cultivation aspect. If your grow is not working in sync with your extraction, you have a lot less to work with. So walk us through a little bit of the history. I mean, it's awesome. You're talking about Icey Bubble Man, you've been steeped in cannabis culture for a long time.
Yeah.
What did your evolution look like to now, working with the businesses that you do? What does that evolution look like?
Yeah, so I started washing cannabis unprofessionally. I was really looking at it from a passion project. I wanted to learn more about cannabinoids, why they extracted certain ways with certain temperatures and ice and water. why dry sift did what it did, and started studying the actual techniques a little bit further than just doing them. But along the journey, I've been lucky to be an artist and be a musician, and that's really had a lot of crossover for me in my career. I played music with bands like Sound Tribe Sector 9 and collaborated with artists like Machine Drum and Sepulture, and I've had an interesting time borrowing ideologies from music and then instilling that into science and into organic chemistry, so to speak. So it's been a fun journey to be able to borrow theory, the way things are put together, and come at it from a really creative angle.
Cool. That's awesome. And I think one of the anecdotes you shared with me on the phone was that, way early on in the process, you guys would get a better wash in the winter, kind of leading up to some of the technology and the thoughts that we're having now. What have been some of the biggest groundbreaking developments that you've seen, doing solventless for 20 years now?
So I think that the biggest groundbreaking things that we've been able to do is be more selective about the resin that we're actually washing, as simple as that is. When we were growing before, we were very limited. We were sometimes so limited that it's all you had. So if you grew a haze and it wasn't going to wash well, that's what you washed, and you're only getting a few grams out of that. So I think it's important to note that it's understanding the process and understanding your inputs. And I think the biggest evolution of that has been just that, is the inputs in which we're focusing on. And I think it's, hey Mitch, how you doing? And I think it's important that we take note that temperature and time have played a big role in what we're doing with specifically water hash. And we weren't really paying attention to temperature until we'd wash in the winter months, as I was talking with you earlier. And then we would notice that the hash was much nicer, much blonder, much more stable, and air drying that at the time, because again, we didn't have lipization at the time or any of these things that we currently have as tools in our labs to dry our material. We were trying our best to be really efficient. That's where microplaning came from, and that's where making sure that you were breaking everything up evenly so it had an even surface area for air to currently have a current flow over it, and really dry the material out well. So those things, fast forward through the early mid 2000s, we were all trying to figure out a really stable way to dry material so it was that nice blonde material. And then we started backing ourselves into the horticultural aspect of it. So all of these things really have a symbiotic relationship. And that's where the analogy of music comes in for me. And it's, you have to have symbiotic relationship with the other people you play music with. Otherwise, it's just disjointed. So that's the same way that I look at extraction and the process in which we have to go through. You can use the wine analogy where the trichome heads are really like the grapes. And if they come to us perfectly intact, we're going to be able to grab everything out of those grapes. So all of these ideologies kind of had to go through, and this is what I'm talking about, is really theory here. And that's the biggest evolution until we start to get to the equipment that you're making and the Whistler techs and all of these other things that started coming in. Yes, we were washing in bigger systems that we were custom building, but we didn't have the pump systems that we currently have. We didn't have the recirculation. We didn't have the type of RO systems, the type of ice that we're using. There's so many minute things that go into making a product that has a clean output through and through from input that is pretty damaged. I mean, you're dealing with lots of cellulose. You're dealing with lots of, plant waxes that are there or not there. And all these things amount to how your plant material washes. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've all learned is the steps in between the steps, so to speak.
Yeah. No, and that's great. And I really want to get into the music and the cultural aspects. But before we get there, just for everyone who's here, Talk to us a little bit about Vessel Life Science. Is that like a pet or a personal project, as well as Happy Valley? Break down the businesses that you work for and what you do for each.
Yeah, so Happy Valley is the sole business that I work with. So
Gotcha.
Vessel Life Science is not a business, guys. It's never going to be. It's an artist page where it's exciting for me to share what we do in the lab, and it's
Cool.
a way for me to pull people in to then redirect them over to Happy Valley, which is a really amazing project, which I'm excited to talk about here. It's, you know, I think we have an extremely great outfit there. We've built an amazing building that has 10 flower rooms. It feeds everything that we need in the lab, and it allows us to have enough variety and continually wash. You know, we're washing 30 to 60 pounds per day, every single day.
Wow.
So that allows us to have not only variety, but it also allows us to really get deeply involved in the process and how that process is going to go out to patients. You know, and I always say that, you know, it's hard to scale craft, but I think that if you don't let go of your ethos and you really stick to your guns, I think we're living proof of that. And you can produce high quality output at scale and still have it accessible. So that's something that, you know, Happy Valley is really striving to do well. We're, you know, we're constantly improving every day in the lab. I think that we came in with a set of ideas that we wanted to accomplish, and we're really starting to ramp up to accomplish all of those things that we set after to do. And then, you know, I think the important thing for us is that we're given the freedom in the lab to create. And that is very hard to do in production settings where we're trying new things all the time. And that's, I think, what makes Happy Valley exciting for me as a company to work on and work with and be a part of and build. And I think that's, you know, that's what we're really excited about. You know, Zach, my cousin, is my right-hand man in the lab. We have a great team that really helps us on the executive level really bring our dreams alive. You know, like I'm doing terpene extraction within our lab. We're doing a solventless terpene extraction. We're doing all of the mechanical separation that that we want to do, and we're being supported. And that's hard to do in this industry today. And I think that's, you know, what we've really been honing in on is trying to put substance into novelty in that space. So it's an attempt, but it's, you know, we really are just trying to do our best to bring the best quality we can to the patient base here.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of comments on the IG Live right now that are really promoting you guys as being, you know, one of the top dogs in the Northeast. What does the dispensary and product scene look like up in the Northeast right now? I mean, you've traveled across the country, you know the cannabis industry inside and out, and you've decided to, you know, settle up in Massachusetts. What does it look like up there, and what can people expect to be coming out of your lab?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You know, I think right now what I'm honing in on is a lot of refined solventless material that is able to be put into a PAX pod. For instance, this pod right here is the Lemon G, a very hard cultivar to work with, but we were able to work with it in some magical way and really get it to go where we needed to and to make this type of cart. You know, the returns on that particular cultivar are typically really low. So if you have enough of it, you're going to be able to produce what you need with it. So we're also focusing on a lot of THCA. I think the market is really honing in on that right now, which I appreciate. They're starting to understand that, look, you know, if you want a really high tack, you can just throw a little bit of the THCA in with your rosin. It accentuates what you have in terms of tack. And now we're really going after what a BHO kind of experience would be like, but it's still full spectrum, which to me is everything. It's about keeping the cannabinoid spectrum as wide as possible.
No, that's awesome. So, you know, you guys up in the Northeast focused on making great hash up there. Some of the commenters are saying there's not a lot of up there except for you guys. What's the long-term goal with your hash, and what are you guys really trying to do now and in the future with your solventless?
So I think what we're trying to do is expand our footprint a good bit. I think that we're really trying to hone in our process to make it better. I mean, I think we're always questioning how we can get it better across all of the microns. And I think that's something that we're really honing in on at Happy Valley is making sure that we're bringing you guys something better every single time, the next time that you come through, and something to look towards. You know, the rosin right now, I started with fresh press, for instance, because I love the fact that I can give people a chance to experience the transformation of the material. You know, it goes from this beautiful, clear shatter-like material to an opaque, then it starts to butter, and then it starts to secrete the terpenes and flavonoids. And, you know, that's exciting to see for a lot of people because you've never experienced that. You know, it's just stuff that you only see in the lab sometimes. So I think we're going to be expanding with some butter and a full spectrum. You know, we have a full spectrum Deadhead OG on deck that I think is going to be great for everyone up there. I think that's an exciting new one that's going to come down the pipe. We have a Stardog cart, the Illuminati Stardog cart coming. So, you know, taking the East Coast original Stardog, you know, cut and just working exclusively with those types of varieties, which makes me feel at home because a lot of my career is based in sour diesel and all the chems and you know, New York was a big part of my life. So it's, you know, it's important to represent those types of flavors, you know?
Yeah. So I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but we're on a good track here, which is, you know, people were asking as well about cultivars and things that you've gone through. You're talking about chems and a lot of the East Coast strains.
Yep.
What is your current outlook with the strains that you're producing? Are you guys pheno-hunting for certain kinds of things? Are you taking a little bit more of a scattershot approach and trying all kinds of different things? You know, tell us a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to the genetics you want to process.
So typically I've been really hard-nosed about only working with specific varieties. And over the past year, I've really opened up, and, you know, the past 2 decades have been about finding those 1 or 2 varieties that you just wash over and over and over and you really learn everything about. And now I'm looking towards expansion and understanding, you know, we have an exciting time in front of us. We have a ton of polyhybrids that are going to produce a lot of different types of resins, you know, and I think it's important for us right now to search through those things and to have another look at what we've thought were so perfect for us and start to explore. So right now we're really searching through a lot of different things, and I think it's going to be a constant search there. I think that's really what this is going to be about, is having a constant, you know, yes, we're going to have our staples, we're going to have our Stardog, we're going to have, you know, certain things that we're going to want to run. But I think right now we're really yearning for things that are new, you know, and things that I haven't run before, you know. So I think for the guys that are out there that want to find that one variety that works for them and to learn a lot about processing, I think it's important for you guys to find 1 or 2 varieties and just hone in on the process. And then understand how that can translate out. That's, you know, the best advice I can give for anyone. You know, I created a variety called Lemon Cake in '99, and for some reason that thing just crushes on the 90U. And then I used that as the basis of another variety, and created another one called Square Wave, which is just, again, another really big producer. So if you can hone in on varieties that share the type of genetic makeup, that's the kind of thing that's going to make your process work. But ultimately, it's going to be up to you to search and search and search and have that diligence to do all of the work that it takes. You know, it's a lot of work to pheno-hunt.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to really laser in on, because this is a term I'm not super familiar with, and someone had a comment about it. You said polyhybrids. What is a polyhybrid? What is a non-polyhybrid? Explain that to me.
So good question. Yeah, so a polyhybrid is something that has been worked 4, 5 generations. You know, we like to use the word landrace often, but, you know, we're really in a hybrid stage with landrace around the world. There are some landrace, like Mitch is commenting in. We did a project called the Lemonese, which is a Lebanese times lemon cake, which is a great variety. He did a great job with that one. And those things do exist in small pockets, right? But you're talking about, you know, breeding a variety over several generations, and you're introducing new varieties to that pool. So it's going to start stacking all of these different genes together, and they're going to express all of those different traits at once. So as you work from an F1 all the way down to stabilization, or an IBL, if you will, you're
and what does
gonna
IBL
see,
mean? What is that acronym?
Inbred line.
Okay.
So an inbred line is typically what you're going to see, like the sour, like the Res Dog Sour Diesel. This is a good way to talk about this. The Res Dog Sour Diesel. That's really a back cross in an IBL. He back crossed it, and then he did an IBL with it. So you're going to see a lot of variation, and a lot of guys that are from the forums will remember that there really wasn't anything great out of those lines. There were like one or two guys would find something, but I mean, that must have taken thousands of seeds to even find that one. So what I'm getting at here is that to explore genetics means that you're really going into a black box, and that black box doesn't guarantee you're going to come out with anything. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that don't be afraid of searching. When you do find something great, hang on to it, and understand that your process needs to not only be reflective of your material, but it needs to be adaptive to new material. So just think about that in context of variety.
Okay, that was a great explanation. And, you know, I still have a lot to learn on the cultivation and genetic side, but because it's so close to solventless processing, it's something that I'm trying to learn a ton about. I know lots of people are, you know, getting taken to school on this. So to kind of shift gears just a little bit, you know, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the influence that music has had on you and that has had on the cannabis culture as it's gone on. You know, this is something that everyone knows about, but we haven't talked about much on the show. We're so lasered in on hash most of the time. Give everyone a little background on your music and, you know, kind of how you feel that music has influenced cannabis culture. This is a topic I'm super excited about.
Yeah, so music has absolutely been there since the very beginning. I mean, it's always been a catalyst for creativity, and it's always been in the studios that I'm sitting in currently. And it's always been in, I walked into Electric Ladyland Studios, and there everyone is with, you know, working on tracks all the way through, and, you know, it's always around, you know, and it's something that's a part of people's lives. It's a part of their culture, and it's a part of the experience, and it's a part of what makes what we do special in a lot of respects. It gives us a sense of place. It gives us a sense of, you know, inspiration, and that's where the terpenes and the profiles and the varieties come to play. And, you know, we have the hip hop culture going after, you know, the cookie stuff, and then we have, you know, indie rock, you know, going after, you know, the sour diesel and stuff like that. and there's cultural lineage to everyone. And then, you know, it makes sense to me that, you know, the RTJ and cookies and all these people are all collaborating, because it's a part of our culture, man. It's you can't take away the fact that cannabis is in every studio across the world, and it's something that, you know, when you're playing in certain scales, you know, Mixolydian scale, you're or any of these other scales, you're getting a sense of place, and you're getting a sense of style, and that gives you inspiration. So that's where I think the connection really is, and it brings it culturally. It doesn't just bring it into a cannabis conversation. It brings it into an audio sensory overload, you know, conversation. And that's what drives experience. And that's what it goes back to Happy Valley, you know, with the, you know, the pods and how these fit, you know, in your pocket, but you can rip on it and it's like a mini dab, and it's accentuating to you. You're just like kind of rolling around, and it fits with your life. Just like, you know, a mix is going to fit with you driving around. And that's, you know, what I've learned with music is you can't discount passion, and you can't discount experience. And both of those together are really what I think drives the relationship. So
yeah,
in a long-winded way.
No,
You
no,
know,
that was great. And I think one of the things that you said there that, is easy to gloss over is that music production worldwide is being assisted and combined with cannabis use. And that's obviously no accident.
yeah, and I think it extends into art, to painting, literature, skateboarding, surfing, all these things that we all loved so much. I mean, skateboarding's been a big part of myself, and I think that all of these things together are what brings us together. It's the circle, right? And I think that's the thing about hash to me, to bring it back to that, is that's the collective, like seeing Marcus and Phil and Rackham's and everyone doing, and Roxy Gray and all these guys and Best Friend Farms, they inspire myself to push me further. And in return, I hope there's that give and take too, because it's exciting to see, and I get excited for them to see their work up, and them posting about it, because it furthers the conversation that hash can look and be and taste and create these experiences. So so that's, to me, that's why the correlation to music is so close, is beyond just the interaction between the audible aspect of it.
Yeah, and for everyone who wasn't here at the beginning, you said that you have done some touring with STS9, a lot of other bands. I mean, what were those experiences like, and how did cannabis or hash, tie into your touring and, your music career?
Well, it always played a big role. I toured with a band called New Villager for a long time, and I have a project called Calmer, which you guys can find now on iTunes. And I think what those experiences drew me into was, it's in the crowd, it's behind stage, it's on stage, it's just a part of. I don't even think there was a time when I didn't have it on tour. I just don't. And then I look around the experiences of meeting new people and how that brought new people to me, and how those experiences were, everlasting. There's some people that I've met through just the fact that they came and gave me a gram that I'll know forever now, and that's because they came backstage and we had a conversation about music, life, and ultimately cannabis. So that, is huge to me. It just shows to me that the universe really brings people together through this plant, and we're really just, getting inside of it as a vehicle. It really truly is, a vehicle for everyone to come together. So, that's the thing that gets me excited, and the reason I talk about those things so much is that, it's just been a part of my life just as much as hash has been. So
I
love all those guys.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've been around a lot of those circles. How do you feel about, a lot of these big artists are now collaborating with growers and coming out with their own lines of products? I think a lot of people tend to feel that it seems extremely commercial. What's your take on those arrangements? And, is that take maybe a little short-sighted?
I think it's a little short-sighted. I mean, you got to look at it from, as someone who spent their whole life building and building and building after trying to build a career in music, you have to look at like how much. For instance, let's look at RTJ. If you don't know who RTJ is, it's Run the Jewels. They just did a really big thing with cookies, but it's great. And here's why it's great: because they worked so hard to build their careers out. They spent night after night in the studio grinding to make those songs and to build themselves into what they are now. For them to work with just anybody is something that is hard to do. And I think Cookies has proven that in terms of what they have as an output, it works for them. Now, is it, if the term corporate in the word, I guess it could be corporate, but I truly look at them as a vehicle, just like a label is a vehicle in a lot of respects. You can't discount someone that can give you a ton of distro, because it just is going to help you touch more people, and if it's about touching more people, why is that a bad thing? They have the platform. Why not plug into it and just work with them? And that's where I think, like, it's okay to be touching more people. It's always been a dream of me to not just make hundreds of grams, it's to make thousands of grams so thousands of people can enjoy that product. And that's the thing I think we can look at with big companies, is that it's not about how big they are. It's what do they stand for and who do they represent? And that's what I go back to the artist analogy. Is the artist, like myself, we represent our ethos, like to the core. We don't want to let go of what we believe in. And I think that's the thing that we can all look towards as a positive, is like, look, man, it's okay. Just because they're with like the biggest store in the world just means you can get more of it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as
that's
it's
interesting.
Good. As long as it's really good.
So,
you know,
that's a good question there too, that we talked about earlier, is like, where does the cross happen between scaling and preserving quality? Because I'm sure there's people that are tuned in now. There's people I've talked to. There's some people that simply don't believe that quality can scale. And there's some that believe that it can, but with certain compromises or certain, accepting certain things. I know you guys are trying to scale. What's your take on scaling quality when it comes to solventless?
I think you can absolutely scale quality. I think that you have to have the right team in place. I think that's the most important thing. You have to have a deep amount of passion, dedication, and never want to give up. If you're working with me, you're working in 28-degree weather for 16 hours. Yeah. It takes a very specific type of person to want to do that. So, you're talking about things that it's dedication, it's the love, it's the passion, and then it's having really good skill sets and paying attention. That's where the artistry and the like I was saying to you before, it's like this equipment's kind of like guitars. Like, you can walk into the store and buy the equipment. You can buy a guitar. You can go learn chords and inversions and how to play in different scales. But ultimately, it's to the attention to detail. It's the things that you're looking for that makes it individual for you, that translates through that process. So I think scaling that can absolutely be done with the right thought process, the theory, and like I said, the right team and work ethic. But again, there is sacrifice in some respect, but I haven't really seen that sacrifice on my end transpire. I think what we're making, I wanted to, when I was grading our stuff, I honestly wanted to have a lower tier hash, but it was all came out the way it came out. So I think that we can absolutely scale it. I think that's what our mission is at Happy Valley, is to scale this product and this product offering, and to scale the Happy Valley offering to, as many people as we can, and to constantly have different variety. So it's all about, your quality, and that's really what it comes down to. And I think a lot of people that are talking about how it can't be done, I challenge them to think about how it can be done.
Mm-hmm. No, I like the message here, and it's super positive and optimistic, something that we're super interested in learning about more. And one of the things that you told me when the first time I met you years ago was that, your kind of mission is to get more solventless to the people, and that often price can be a barrier. Where do you see solventless going maybe in the next 1, 3, 5 years, and how does that relate to price, so that more people would be willing to take the plunge and really get on the solventless train?
Well, only by solventless. Don't spend money on other things. No, I'm just kidding. So it's important to take note that the process, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're talking about price. And I think the main thing that we look at is the process in which we go through to get that product into your hands, and the different steps that it takes for us to do that. There's a cost structure to all that. So, we do our best right now as someone who's coming into the market as a new market to really hit as close to a good deal as we can. And I know people are like thinking to themselves like, man, Colin, that is not what I'm talking about. But it's you guys have to understand that what we go through to make it is a lot. And there's things that we can't compromise. Otherwise, you're going to see that on the shelf. if I compromise, it's going to be seen in that product. And I just think that you know, all of you out there deserve something you didn't know you could have, as I didn't even know this is something that we could make when I first started doing it. And I want everyone to realize that we will get it down in price over time. It's about going through these motions, working through what we're going through now, you know, in the industry itself, you know, and I think we're going to all come back out the back end of this with a really reasonable cost structure for everyone. And it's going to start to make a lot more sense. But it, you know, let's face it, Eric, you know, no one believed that we could even get it to this point anyway. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think it's about pushing through you know, you can't do it to, you know, hey man, look at this. Now we're doing it, you know, and that's the simple thing about it is it's important to understand for everyone that it's a times thing. We need to go through the motions. For us, we're going to get there.
Yeah. Change can be slow and it comes in spurts, as we're seeing right now. You know, what do you think is happening in the Northeast? I mean, Massachusetts has gone recreational. New York and New Jersey have been flirting with it. I almost can't believe that they haven't gone rec, but then it's also such an old boys club with the laws and the legal out there, you know, having a lot of family from New York and at least understanding it vaguely. Where do you think the laws in the Northeast are headed for some of the other states around you guys?
I think that we're looking at, you know, right now we're in a COVID-19 situation, and that's another thing everyone should take note of is, you know, reason why things aren't happening quickly is I believe that there's just people are on recess and they're out. Yeah. But ultimately, from a licensing standpoint, I think that we have Massachusetts, which is a really, really healthy state in terms of potential. Mm-hmm. We have New York, which is absolutely going to go. We have Pennsylvania that will definitely go. Rec, I mean, so they already have a medical bill, and for both those states. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see an expansion. I think if we're talking about the crystal ball here, you know, I think that we're going to see a lot of expansion in these states, and I think we're going to see, you know, a good healthy mix of people coming out the back end of COVID-19, and we might even have some kind of federal talk on the table too, but that's another big conversation to have. But it's yeah man, I think we're looking at the East Coast exploding. Yeah, and I know that California in many ways has been, you know, the nucleus of the cannabis industry in many ways for a long time. I mean, and everything that was going on up in BC, like what Bubbleman has talked to me about. Do you think that New York is also going to rise to be one of these like premier hash scenes because the cost of living is higher? People are used to spending more money. I mean, I get the sense that some of these big cities in the Northeast are going to cultivate some like really interesting hash cultures, especially around solventless. Yeah, so if I can speak on New York specifically, I spent a lot of time in New York, and I can tell you firsthand, yes, New York is going to be an incredible situation for, you know, for those types of products used to have a home. And I think that's apparent to me that there's a ton of creatives there, a ton of musicians that, you know, are willing to spend the money. And you're right, I think there is disposable income that, you know, we can get, but ultimately it's going to be a good cultural market because of the cultural aspect of the city. And I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting things, you know, come out of that. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of different neighborhoods that represent different cultures. And I think once we see a rec, you know, bill in those types of states, we're going to see some really cool stuff. And I think solventless is definitely going to be a big part of the conversation moving forward. And I think it's a big conversation in the industry moving forward. I think we're at the point where, you know, we're on the shelf. You know, I think we've proven that, you know, there's a moment where bubble hash wasn't really on the shelf all the time. So now that, you know, we have the ultra refined products like rosin, and then now we can do sauces and diamonds and all of those types of things that we love to do, you know, there's a home for all of this. So that's really what I think. And you know, the techniques, if you will, I think are really going to start to take shape in those types of markets.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. And I would love to, learn a little bit more about where you guys think, you're going with your products. One of the things that Guy from Poppin' Barkley said on one of our last episodes that was really interesting is he described the funnel of cannabis use from extremely casual users at the top who might only use a topical or a balm, and then moving into more like edibles, and then getting all the way down to, really premium hash rosin dab, or somewhere in the middle, a solventless vaporized cart. Where are you guys going with your product line specifically as it pertains to solventless?
I think we're moving towards more variety in the vape category.
Okay.
And really, I would consider that more of a personal pocket device category. I think it's
okay.
it is a vape, but you could dab that stuff too, and it'd be very delicious. So I think it's I think that's something that we want to focus on, and we want to get more textures out to the audience. I think we're looking towards more hybrid, mixing of diamonds with sauces and things like that. And I think we'd really like to bring something that's convenient to that market. It's about convenience in the Northeast for what I'm doing. So I want to make sure that I can provide that with category, with a lot of variety.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that solventless has a big home with edibles and topicals and some of these other products, like Solventless Mind, who's been tuning in? He is posting Solventless Hash gummy shots all the time. There's a lot of people making those kinds of products. Where do you see solventless tying into some of, maybe you would call them like lay products or different consumption types?
I think personally, it's the only way that I want to ingest cannabinoids. It's a full spectrum experience that, for instance, this right here, this is a full spectrum product that has 9.8% THCVA and 5.2% CBG and 2.7% CBC. So to me, that's really exciting for all the other reasons besides Delta 9. And that's the kind of stuff I want to ingest in my body. And it's very therapeutic for my body and my receptors to have. So the endocannabinoid system can really grab onto those types of cannabinoids and be actually therapeutic. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's opening the scope of the cannabinoid field. I think that there's always a place for solvent-based stuff, but for what we do, I think it fits perfect across the board in all categories. I don't think there's even a reason not to use it. I think, especially with the process in itself, we have literally material left over readily available for it. So I think it's important for everyone to look at that, and definitely it's so important. I think it's something that I'd love to see more people explore with.
And this is a hot take. Here's a statement to agree or disagree with. Do you think that as an extractor or as producers out there, if you are not producing solventless, can you still be a premium extraction brand?
You can. I think you can. I think it depends on what your definition of premium is, though. And I think that's some people crying out there.
Very subjective, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I think that there's, like, back to the music analogy, there's a lot of people that can make really great music with different instruments. And I think we can't discount that. And we need to understand that, we're like peeling the orange and squeezing it right off the bat, but there's tang out there too, and there's other things out there, and people will drink that, and they're going to enjoy that, and that could be their version of that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we're so on a pedestal that you only have to use our solventless, but what I would say is I'd invite you to look at the cannabinoid field and decide for yourself what is a better experience and what's going to be more therapeutic for you as medicine or as just a general thing that you want to use. So that's where I'll leave it. Is I don't really have a I don't want to take this high road on it, but I would say that it's important to recognize that there are really talented chemists and people out there that really understand how to use solvents. It's just not something I'm interested in, although I do understand it on a high level.
Yeah. No, and that's great. And, our brand position, just for everyone who's tuned in, is that, we're obviously pro solventless in every way, but then you got to look at companies like Green Dot Labs, and, they've been around for so long, and there's all these companies that have been doing hydrocarbon extraction. And I've had a lot of conversations with extractors who actually say that some strains come out, they feel, in hydrocarbon, and some strains come out better in solventless based on the terpene profiles and just what they're able to do. So I think as much as I love solventless and we love solventless, being honest about the current state of cannabis extracts is the best policy. Would you agree with that?
I think so, and I think that's correct to say all of those things. It's quite factual, I guess, because you're looking at, for instance, we at Happy Valley have a CO2 lab, and the reason those pods are so unbelievable to most people is because of our process, right? And I think that you can be really good at what you do, and it just depends on, again, how well you know your instrument. And I think that's important to go back to for everyone, is just hone in on it. You're going to be good. But yes, you're right. Certain varieties are going to extract better in CO2 versus BHO versus solventless versus ethanol even. So, looking at the scope of processing, absolutely. And that goes back to the strain or the cultivar specific aspect, and why I'm so, crazy about working with medicinal genomics and sequencing all of my varieties, so I understand what exactly I have, making sure that when we cultivate things that is represented all the way through, we're actually looking at feeding, and we can actually develop things further and not just kind of like just wing it. And I think that's the most important thing, is like to understand your process. If you're in CO2 and you're going to be great at that, I think that's something you can do well. We have awesome pods, but I prefer these much, much more.
Yeah. And that product that you brought up for a second there that had THCV, CBG, was that a vape pen? What was that?
Yeah, so this is a PAX pod. You can get this, let's see if I can.
Yeah, the focus is a little tough with the front-facing cameras.
So this is a fully solventless cart right here. Yeah. The reason that I used PAX was because we could dial the temperature gauges in perfectly. I could give everyone kind of guardrails in which, I didn't want them to come back running it too hot and say that I burnt all of my volatiles off and all the terpenes are gone. So it was a really good platform for me to put guardrails on, or really for Happy Valley and us to decide that, we really wanted to make sure the experience was there and you didn't come back. Because I think 510 can be very tricky sometimes, just based on the voltage.
Yeah. Yeah, and Solventless Mind has a great question there too, which is, there's a fair amount of waste. What's your take on that?
It's such a big conversation, but it's I agree. I think it's really hard to swallow that you want to give people such an awesome experience, but that they're just like, it's a half gram, so it's gone. I think there's a give and take, as we all kind of recognize, and it's not something that I prefer. It's actually something that I'm working towards to get a handle on. And I don't know if there's recycling programs that we can tap into yet, but I think, at Happy Valley, that's why we jar all of our flour. We induction seal everything. Like my hash here is all induction sealed, because it's important to me. And I just left this out over the time we've been talking. I'm going to crack it for everyone here.
Awesome. Thank you for treating us.
Yeah, so we can, you can kind of, and it stayed pretty nice. It's getting a little greasy. It's been sitting here since we've started talking, but the induction seal is really important because it allows the volatiles to stay in there. Obviously these are kept at temperature, but it still feels like I just pulled it out of the freezer. So all of these things, man, all attribute to trying to get it to everyone's hands as fresh as possible. And that's another topic I kind of want to touch on here is how do we get what we do to everyone the way that I see it in the lab. And I think that's something that we are specializing at on the retail side at Happy Valley, is making sure that the customers that come in are really educated on the actual material that they're walking home with. So we have these terp chillers and different things you can put your material in when you walk out the door, because it is summertime and it is, it's a hard thing to handle when you're leaving a dispensary when you've never maybe even held this material before. So the induction seal really helps, and making sure everything's, held in glass. And obviously when we first started jarring this stuff, I know a lot of people out there, you can remember we used silicone, and we learned really quickly that was a big no-no. So I think that, when you're talking about waste, man, it's a part of, it's par for course right now. And I just wish that it wasn't. But right now, like on Hash Church, we've talked about at length, like there's no way to get away from plastic right now. It's just fundamentally the design right here just can't do it. And someone just chimed in, we need to get away from Chinese carts. You're right. And I think that has to do with time and supply chain. And these companies need to go through talking to guys like yourselves out there that are demanding better and demanding more. So it's just important. Yeah, Rackhams. But it's, I mean, Solventless Line just mentioned, like, he has a design you can put in motion. I mean, I would jump on that in a second. If someone had the setup, like I think I could convince everyone to use that as if it was recyclable, but I think we're just in a weird spot right now with the industry where we're all doing our best. We all recognize the problem, but I just don't see a way forward without recycling programs and then really good engineers coming in and designing things.
Yeah, I personally, for everyone who's tuned in, I'm very optimistic about where things are headed. I mean, if you look back on history, it's almost staggering what things used to be like in the past. And I think that the cannabis industry is really good at evolving and making moves. And even though there is a ton of waste being produced, I agree with what you said, that it is par for the course, but that at least a lot of people are really focused on making improvements there. So I for one will count myself in the optimist camp. I guess one other question I have, and we've got about 7 minutes left here, is how do you feel, for the purists that are on the show, is there a major difference in the experience between, your very best pen and your very best full melt? And is that an experience that, the lay consumer could attempt to have without, a blowtorch, for example? Because I feel like there's a big gulf between those two worlds.
You're talking about delivery, like Puffcos versus blowtorches versus...
Sure.
Versus
delivery
E-rig.
of like primo solventless products. Because, melt is a ritual, as Phil said.
It is. It's a total ritual. And I still think after all these years, the e-nail still wins for me with a good dish. Like, that's the best way to experience it. It's a commitment to have a hot item just on blast all the time. But I think it's important that, the e-nails and the d-nails of the world are used for full melt 6-star or even 5-star. And then you can even use them for rosins and all the other ultra refined stuff. But then you can use a Puffco. Puffcos are great for your rosins and stuff because it helps people that are afraid of the dab rig get into what you're what you're making, and it allows it to be more accessible. Now, in terms of like cannabinoid profiles, I think that the material all presents a different option for everyone, where my rosin cart is going to be lower in overall THCA, but higher in minor cannabinoids, versus the rosin, which is much higher in major cannabinoids and lower in minor cannabinoids, and those types of things. And then you have THCA, which you can mix in, which is really, that's going to be able to give you a better control over what you're looking for. And I think having all of those things gives you the option at any given time to be like, you know what, I don't really want a bunch of Delta 9 or THCA right now. But I think in terms of delivery, Puffco is great. The e-nail is really the king in terms of material and how that material is used over, a longer period of time. You can get, 6 or 7 good rips off of bubble hash 6-star, and the same thing with rosin at the right temperatures. So it's, I think it goes back to another thing, which is, what do people like? Do they want this like Puffco thing, or are they looking for a rig with a blowtorch? There's certain people that feel like you can get even more dialed in with the rig and the temp tech. And some people feel like, they can't get it dialed in and it's an art form. So, the e-nail is probably easier for those types of people. But, it's exciting right now with all these devices. I mean, I have so many different ones, even sitting on this desk right now in the studio here. There's a plethora of different e-nails out there, man. But it's, at the end of the day, I think the rig, e-nail rig, and then a basic blowtorch is really, truly always the best at the end of the day. That's just kind of how I would say, in terms of advice.
Well, I always like to ask our hash makers, as much as I can remember, what their consumption preferences are, because you're the expert and you consume, and just like you said, solventless cannabinoids are your preference. So with the time that we've got left, I'll say this one last time. If you did not watch or get in on the full episode, make sure to watch the whole thing afterwards. We'll have it up on YouTube in a couple weeks, Instagram shortly. We've got just a couple minutes left here, and I've got 2 questions for you. One, where can people find your products, and what do you guys have out there? Any cool new things hitting the shelves here soon?
Yeah, so we have a store in Happy Valley has a store in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is open from 10 a.m. to, I believe, 9 p.m. at night. Or
okay.
I have to check the hours there. Paraphrasing, sorry guys. That's in Gloucester, Massachusetts. What we have on the shelf there, that's the only place that you're going to find our solventless offerings currently in the state of Massachusetts. We have currently C99 6-star, GG4 5-star, which could be considered 6-star depending on the day you're feeling. Square Wave 6-star. We have C99. No, we don't have. We have C99 73 120 coming. That's for the future, everyone out there. That's a new one that we packed. We have some of that coming down the pipe, which I'm really excited about. Currently on the shelf, to finish that off though, we have Rosetta Stone 90U, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. It's very, it's just really complex. I recommend everyone to get that one. We have Stardog Illuminati 90U, and we have Square Wave 90U. The Square Wave is super unique because it's very complex and then has this really diesel-y gas on the end of it. It's really, really good. Yeah, Raccoons, you get it. Yeah, buddy. But it's really good and it's really balanced. It's super strong and I really enjoy that one. And then we have Garlic, which is a variety that I bred, which is a ChemD times Girl Scout Cookie backcross times OGKB F2.
Nice.
And that particular variety just dumps and it's delicious. I highly recommend that for everyone out there that likes the Chem Dogs and the sours. That one kind of just brings all of those flavors together and brings a really complex palate. And it really does literally taste like garlic. It's delicious. So I definitely check that out. We're working on some moon rockets right now that'll come out, which are GG4 dry sift, Stardog dry sift, and GG4 flour.
Nice.
So,
well, hey, I don't want to cut you off here, but it literally will kick us off in the next 45 seconds. So last question, where can people find you guys online? At Happy Valley MA, at Vessel Life Science, any other places you would encourage people to check out?
Follow Bubbleman, follow Hash Church, and follow Go Peer Pressure, and keep keep doing your thing, everyone, and appreciate the support. Thanks for having me on, and check out all the stuff that we're doing over at Happy Valley. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for taking some time. I appreciate everyone who's tuning in. And check our Instagram here in about the next 15 to 30 minutes for a super special announcement. I will get this episode up soon. Thanks for joining, Collin.
Thanks, man. Take care, everybody.
All
Take
right.
care.
See you later.
Oh,